Hello, my name is Francis Bennion. This talk is about the present unrest over teachers' pensions. The National Union of Teachers, NUT, and the Association of Teachers and Lecturers, ATL, have called a one-day strike on the 30th of June, with more strikes threatened. It seems there have been a flight from reason in their actions. This is strange because teachers are supposed to instruct their pupils in reason and obviously need to practice it themselves. Reason is indeed the bedrock of all education. The French polymath Blaise Pascal wrote in his famous collection of aphorisms titled Pensées, Thoughts, reason commands us far more imperiously than a schoolmaster, for in disobeying a schoolmaster one is unfortunate, but in disobeying reason one is a fool. The NUT were disobeying reason the first time I encountered them. This was in 1970. When a child of mine was looking to take her O-level exams. To keep her privacy, I will call her Peggy, which is not her name. Peggy was naturally anxious about these exams. When, in pursuit of a desired increase in their members' salaries, the NUT threatened to wreck the exams, by immorally calling out on strike the teachers who would be invigilators at them, Peggy grew more anxious. I determined to do something about it and formed a pressure group called Save the 70 Exams. I say the NUT were disobeying reason by threatening school examinations, because reason is the foundation of morality. It was immoral and therefore contrary to reason for the teachers, in order to further their personal financial advantage, to threaten to prevent the exams being held, thus causing their pupils great anxiety. A teachers' union which is resolved not to disobey reason in this kind of way is the Professional Association of Teachers, PAT for short, now also known as VOICE, the Union for Education Professionals. It was founded in that same year, 1970, by two NUT members, Ray Bryant and Colin Lester. Its cardinal rule is members shall not go on strike in any circumstances. This applies to all members. Strike includes any kind of industrial action. In 1991, Ray and Colin published a book on the early years of PAT. Here is a short passage from it relating to affairs in 1970. I quote, "The NUT threat to examinations, in its turn, brought forth a response in the form of Francis Bennion's Save the 70 Exams campaign, launched with typical professional gusto in February, with the objective of recruiting 50,000 volunteers to supervise GCE and CSE examinations. For Ray and Colin, this publicity seemed to point to someone with similar views to their own." That's the end of quote. Ray and Colin wrote to me offering support for my campaign, in return for similar support from me for their own efforts. I quote again from their book, quote, "With the vigour and enterprise typical of him, Francis Bennion was quick to send a most encouraging reply, saying, 'I would be very happy to help in any way I can.' The upshot was the founding of PAT, which believes that it is unprofessional not to put the interests of pupils ahead of those of their teachers. As the author of a book on professional ethics and the first national chairman of PAT, I heartily agree. So too does the General Teaching Council for England. In its Code of Conduct, published in 2009, 8 principles of conduct and practice are laid down. The first is that teachers must, quote, put the well-being, development and progress of children and young people first. Why have the NUT and the ATL called a one-day strike on the 30th of June, with more strikes threatened? They object to a coalition government proposal to increase pension contributions and defer the age of retirement in the public sector generally. Reason tells us that the government need to do this because people are living longer and so drawing on more public funds by way of pension payments. Public pensions are much larger than employers in the private sector can afford to pay their workers, which is unfair. Fairness is also an attribute of reason. The coalition proposal is not some vicious Tory plot. It is basic policy of the Liberal Democrats, a party which many ATL members support. The proposal is based on a thorough fact-finding report drawn up by Lord Hutton, a former Labour government Work and Pensions Secretary. The proposal has only just been made. It is early days. Why jump into strike mode? It is obviously contrary to reason. The ATL represents more than 160,000 teachers, lecturers and others concerned with education. This is the first strike in its 127-year history. Its president, Andy Brown, said, "It is with deep reluctance that I announce the date for ATL's first ever national strike, Thursday, the 30th of June 2011. We do not want to strike, but unless we take a stand now, the government will irreparably damage education in this country, and children will lose out." It was irrational to say that. Andy Brown's predecessors would never have behaved in this way. They believed striking against pupils was immoral, as it is. That is why they never did it. Why are Andy Brown and his colleagues behaving so differently? What on earth has got into them? It is all part of the flight from reason. There is another aspect to this flight from reason. The whole question of changing pension ages to meet growing longevity is at present in the hands of our democratic parliament. The Pensions Bill, a government bill, was introduced into the House of Lords on the 12th of January this year. It completed its stages in the Lords on the 27th of April. In accordance with the usual practice, it then started its progress in the House of Commons. It is a long way to go yet. The rational way would be to wait and see how that bill is ultimately treated by Parliament. That would also be the democratic way. It has been stated that at least 1 million children could be seriously affected by the threatened strikes. They must cause youngsters facing exams great anxiety, as they did when I was prompted to take action back in 1970. Clearly the present teachers and lecturers who threaten to strike are not putting their pupils' well-being first. They have disobeyed reason in a number of respects, which I've tried to sketch out in this talk. If you are one of them, I appeal to you not to descend to strike action. Instead, you might like to join the anti-strike union Voice, which provides all the usual trade union services to its members. I will put the details on the screen for you to read at the end of this talk. A final note. I've just learned that on the 21st of June, Dave Prentice, president of the biggest British trade union, Unison, delivered a speech to his conference at which he urged them, in what I believe is an illegal way, to support the teachers' strike threats as part of a wider aim of bringing down the government. Those are his words. I propose to deal with this in a further video on YouTube.